Oh, of course, the Black Lives Matter subject. And simply because, I mean, it's such a charged, such a charged time in general with the killing of people, unarmed people by the police department, and particularly black people. And I often wonder lately, like, where is that coming from? Where is it coming from? So if you really check out the history of black people, it has always been that way. You know, the police was developed, the police departments were developed out of recollecting the slaves that run away, you know, and people were, they were paid to track down and find runaway slaves. That was the evolution of the police department. So it's pretty sad with the George Floyd thing that happened. People, I mean, when I grew up, I grew up in Los Angeles, and the police departments were pretty obnoxious when I was a teenager. Because I could be walking down the streets as a 15, 16-year-old kid and just be stopped for no particular reason just because I was on the streets and I was black. They would make you get up against the wall and search you, do all kinds of stuff, get on the ground. All of these things for what? For what? Because I was black, skin color. So, of course, right now, that is a very big issue. As I was saying with George Floyd, we kind of got to see, at least the nation, the United States, the nation got to see what goes on with black men, black males, all the time. This is, the only thing that was new about that was the fact that it was on, someone recorded it, you know, on a phone. And you saw exactly the kind of stuff that was pretty typical. And so like a lot of black people were not necessarily surprised, but we've come to a point where we're saying, that's enough. We've had it. It's time for this to change. We see ourselves as living in a civilized society, and we're doing these uncivilized things as a matter of an institutional practice. That's wrong. I mean, it violates first of all, it violates the Constitution, and it also violates everything that we hold dear as a country. And it is time for that wound to be healed. And I do see it as a big wound in our nation's being, you know? We have to fix that. And that resonates more than anything else right now for me as a black man.
Will you find that showing up in your art in the near future?
Yes. Yes. I actually have a series that I'm working on right now called The Disappearing Man. Mm-hmm. And The Disappearing Man kind of started out of that. Well, first of all, it started out of stereotypes. How people are stereotyped, especially minorities. So we are identified, or we are defined by a social stigma, a social construct, the social construct of color. I mean, we're all human beings. I mean, that's just that. We are all human beings. However, some human beings are relegated to be identified as less than because of a skin color. I find that insane. I find it just absolutely insane. And so what I am doing with the Disappearing Man is like I'm calling attention to that. So each one of these men, and they're generic. It's like, this is what we do. We identify human beings as colors. So there's a red man, there's a yellow man, there's a brown man, There's a black man. There's a black and white man. There's a red and white man. There's a yellow and black man. There's, this is what we do, and it's absurd. So I want to point to the absurdity of it all. Also the hubris of man. How we do so many crazy things, just because we can. No matter how much it endangers society, how much it endangers ourselves, our children, our future. It's like, why? We've developed weapons that can kill ourselves, 1,000 times over or more, And so when I did the Icarus piece, it was pointing to pointing to moderation. The Icarus mythology is all about moderation. Icarus and Daedalus were captured in the prison of Minos, and Daedalus, Icarus' father, who was an artisan, or they call him an artificer, who made things out of, he's like me. He made things out of materials that he found around him, So Daedalus decided to make some wings for he and his son Icarus to escape from the prison of Minos with wax and string and feathers that he found in the prison of Minos. And so they were escaping. They were planning this escape. But prior to the escape, Daedalus told Icarus, be careful not to fly too low, because the mist of the water will bog your wings down and you will fall to your demise. Be careful not to fly too high, because the sun will melt the wax that I put your wings together with. You have to find that middle place. And here Icarus goes, and he's so intoxicated by his ability to fly that he completely forgot what his father had told him, and he flew too close to the sun and fell to his demise. That, to me, is a cautionary myth that we should all listen to, man should listen to, period. Moderation is where it's at. It's all about moderation. These radical things to the right, these radical things to the left, they won't work. They will make us all disappear. We will ultimately disappear unless we find that place of moderation in the middle. And the disappearing man is to let man know that we are an endangered species simply because we are flying way too close to the sun. In terms of global warming, just look around you. There's so many different issues that can ultimately destroy us if we don't get a hold of ourselves. If we don't come back from that place too close to the sun or that place too close to the sea. We need to find that place in the middle. And so, Disappearing Man is a series that's about that. The name of this show is called Ode to Democracy, Long Live the Kings. And these pieces behind us are works that I did in a collaboration with my ex-wife, who wrote a poem called Ode to Democracy, Long Live the Kings, which is quite a profound poem. But basically these pieces are about how we moved to this country, came to this country from Great Britain because we were trying to get away from, being ruled by the kings, being ruled by a monarchy, that kind of things. And so we went from one kind of monarchy to a different kind of monarchy. And this is pointing to what the monarchy is that we are living under right now, which is money, which is like, there are a handful of people who are basically calling the show. As much as we want to delude ourselves that it's something different, there are just a few people who dictate what our laws are, you know, the lobbyists, all of these rich companies, they're basically determining how we live. So they have become the kings. And so that's what that poem is all about. How we are pitted against ourselves, how the people who are the peasants, who are the people who are not the rich people. We are pitted against ourselves. The poor are pitted against, other poor people. The blacks are pitted against the whites. We have all of these different kinds of things that control. And all of those things that are all of these things that are put together to control us, we are being deluded. We are being deluded that it is something else. Be upset with that black guy over there. Be upset with those immigrants. They're taking your jobs, you know. Be upset with somebody else. Do not look at us. We have nothing to do with this. Look at your neighbor. Be upset with him. Be angry. Be afraid. You know, that's how we get controlled. You know, when those guys on the top there, they're calling the shots. They're telling you what. Those are the people that we should be upset with, really. But we are deluded because they don't want the focus to be on them.
Even during all this large redistribution of wealth to the top 1% during
Absolutely.
the pandemic.
It's getting even more that way.
Yeah.
It's like with all of the things that have been going on lately, you know, your people are struggling, trying to make a living, trying to get by and all that. And then you look at the top 1%, they're getting richer. They're making way more money percentage-wise than anybody in our society. The top 1, 2, 3%. And this country's been like that forever. And we've been fighting these battles against each other. You know, it's like black and white, the civil rights movement, all that kind of stuff. It's a distraction. It's a distraction. And just like the kings, I mean, it's the same stuff that was going on that we fought against. We're just refighting that. I mean, it's like it's recreated itself right here in our country, and so we need to fight that battle. We need to put the focus on where the trouble really lies, and that's in the people that are controlling everything. Yes, you know, we're completely being delusionary and being brainwashed by advertising, news media. There's just a long list, but who's controlling those things? Go straight to the top. That's where it's coming from. That's the message. Hear your orders. This is what I want you to do. Let's focus on this. Let's focus on that. You know, people are more interested in this. They're more interested in that. Oh, get these people over here upset. You know, bring this issue up. Get them upset so that they won't focus on me. So, long live the kings. I think people have to educate themselves. And that's another thing too. It's like this whole systematically denigrating the education system. You know, people are getting less and less educated. People are being less and less prone to critical thinking. We need, you know, it's like, okay, we need our trades and all that kind of stuff too, but we also need our humanities. We need our social studies and our humanities. We need to know how to think about issues. A lot of human beings these days in our country do not know how to think about issues. We break things down to either black or white. There are so many shades of grays in between the black and white. There's so many colors. There's so many wonderful things that we could be focusing on instead of this being, you know, against ourselves. But people need to know. Like right now, it really makes me happy that a lot of people are more interested right now in finding out things about our history, especially black history. That makes me smile, brings a smile to my face, because this is long overdue. I mean, black people we came from slavery, but slavery kind of continued in some ways, in a lot of different ways for a long time. And so people are starting to realize and start to find out how that works and how it has worked, and why black people are in certain kinds of conditions, why we have ghettos and why we have a bunch of poor people. Well, that didn't happen just because, black people were just like stupid or illiterate or just lazy and all these other stereotypes that have been thrown at us. It's a systematic thing that's been happening since slavery ended. It's systematic, but people need to know that story. People need to know all the stories of our history. We're sold a bill of goods. Think about your history classes that you had in high school. A lot of these things, a lot of this stuff that's coming up right now, never heard about that. Those are the things that should be taught. We should be taught about how our government works. Everyone should know how a bill, how we come up with these bills. Everyone should know all of this stuff about how our government functions, but not only that, we should know about businesses, like how just a basic business function. You should know all of that kind of stuff. Instead, we just like whatever we believe. It's like everybody, well, I believe it's this way or I believe it's that way. That is not going to make things better. It is not. Just because you believe something does not make it real. And so there's a lot of delusion. There's just so much delusion and illusion. When I first started as a professional artist, one of my first series that I did was about illusion. It was like just the physical part, just how illusion works. Trompe l'oeil, to fool the eye. I was really, really focused on that because I saw so much of it in our society. How we're so, like people are fooled so easily, like these little tricks, and they fall for those tricks all the time, And so it just illusion fascinated me because I took this trip one time to Italy, and I went to the Vatican, and I saw all of this wonderful stuff that they had there, especially the architecture. And I was looking at this molding. I was just standing there looking at this molding, and it's like, God, that is so beautiful. God, how they carved that. How did they get those beautiful? And I got closer and closer to it, and I realized somebody had painted that. And that's what got me going with the illusion. My gosh, if I could have walked away thinking that was just wood and architecture. But instead, it was someone painted it to look like something that it was not. And that happens all the time in our society. That happens in our world, where we are deluded by so many different things because we're not paying attention. We're not looking closely at what's going on. And that's why I refer to the whole history thing. We need to know. We need to know what has transpired in the past. And it's like, it's cliche to say, if you don't know your past, you won't know your future. But it's really true. Like, if you don't know where you've been, how do you know where you're going? And so, illusion, like not falling for the illusionary tricks, that's where we begin. That's where we start to change. Find out what's really going on. Find out what has really transpired. People should educate themselves. They really should, especially about civil rights and those kinds of things, about somebody that's not them, the other. Let's learn things about the other. Those people who are relegated to being the people that we ignore in society. Why are we ignoring those people, like poor people? We'd never talk. I remember when I was a young person, when I was a teenager, people used to talk all the time about the poor. How often do you hear people talk about the poor anymore? It's not that they've gone away. They're still around. There's probably more poor people now than they've been in a long, long, long time. I mean, think about how many homeless people there are. There are a lot of homeless people right now. I remember a time when there weren't that many homeless people. And now we have like cities of homeless people. It's why? The why is really important. And to change, if we're going to change anything, we've got to know the why. We've got to know the why. We have to find out. We have to educate ourselves.